New Zealand off of the east coast of the world. And it extends so far out that it's often left off of maps. And it's actually appearing to be, as it should be based on the coordinates, it should be about the position that Australia is on a Mercator, but instead it isn't on there at all. And most times, even though its coordinates fit within the 180 degrees east perimeter. So New Zealand was a part of the Royal Society, and they kept journals, which was coined the transactions. And I think they had about 3 series of them. And oftentimes, the Royal Society of New Zealand has been basically, I don't know if you want to say shunned upon or whatever the case may be, because they do not follow modern or typical science. They do a lot of studies, of course, on animals and birds and fauna and things like that around their island, but there are 2 islands, but they don't dabble into mathematics that much, which is a great thing, and it is a reason why they do not, and we'll go further into that. So in 2017, the Journal of the Royal Society of New Zealand was published by the Royal Society alongside the 6 scientific journals that the Society took over in 1991 when the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, DSIR, was restructured. New Zealand has a lot of history with volcanoes and cyclones and things of that nature because it's pretty much out there in the ocean. And there are a lot of systems that go through that area, which cause, of course, extreme weather events. So I'm sure that you all have heard of what some say is a planet named Venus and some say is a star. Of course, it was named after the Roman goddess of love, allegedly. So, ancients believed that if you gazed at the stars in wonder, were apt to mistake Venus for 2 separate astral bodies, a morning and an evening star. So, later, allegedly, Pythagoras recognized that it was a single object. Now, I have done some research on stars and have learned how different particles actually merge together to form a star, or should I say elements. It was coined the Great Star. So one of the interesting things about the Royal Society of New Zealand is they actually had a group of explorers. So there was a young naturalist by the name of Joseph Banks, and pretty much they kept ship logs of a expedition that took place on a ship named Endeavour, and it set sail from Plymouth on August 12th, 1768. So the captain of the ship was named James Cook, and he was tasked, of course, to locate Tahiti, which a 20-kilometer wide speck in the vast Pacific Ocean, which had been encountered for the first times, allegedly by Europeans, just a year earlier. So when he arrived there, he was to construct an astronomical observatory specifically for the purpose of observing the next transit of Venus. And it was expected on June 4th, 1769. So again, he set sail from Plymouth to go to this area, Tahiti, and set up this astronomical observatory. Why that area in the vast Pacific Ocean? Because, of course, it is on the extent of the plane. And so, therefore, a lot of star observations have been conducted in that area because life itself beyond those barriers to an extent, I believe, are the length of the planet. Well, the width of the planet is ever extending past that point again, which is why New Zealand is often left off of the maps. because the maps are often incorrect. 91. So the golden question, it's kind of like Willy Wonka or something. What is the size of our solar system, and what does that reveal about the scale of the cosmos? So they, as scientists and the Royal Society, were just now getting to the nits and bolts in 1691. And when you think about it, that's not really that long ago on the actual size of the solar system. So follow me along because I'm going to get down to everything. They were basically tasked, several different people, to go about different widely spaced locations around the world, and they would all observe the transit at the same time. So that's how Captain Lieutenant James Cook came about to be picked for the voyage by the Royal Society, because the transit of Mars only happens ever so often, like hundreds, if not over 1,000 of years apart. So at that time, Haley suggested that during the transit of Mars, due to it being the closest planet to Earth, would be the only kind of observation that in the next century would yield such high precision that would disclose the distance from the sun to the Earth. And comparing the start and stop times of the transit and calculating according to the principles of trigonometry known as parallax. So parallax, of course, is from a variety of locations on Earth. They thought could yield an answer. So again, Lieutenant James Cook, along with Charles Green, from their temporary observation location, which was in Tahiti, as I stated earlier, but at the time it was listed as King George's Island of the 1769 transit of Venus. So they were saying that a fact attributed to atmospheric blurring at the edge of the disk of the sun. And it was a significant phenomenon affecting observations, which they called the black drop effect. And allegedly, as Venus approaches the edge or limb of the sun, the black of space appears to reach in. And why does the darkness of space appear to reach in? Because these objects, both the sun and Venus, are within the system, a part of it. So this is mainly, although not entirely, allegedly, due to an occurrence known as irradiation, whereby light from a cosmic source is slightly scattered as it passes through Earth's atmosphere, so that the luminescent object appears a little enlarged. So let me break that down and repeat it for you all to understand. Basically, the irradiation that comes from the sun, due to the atmospheric spreading of the light, makes it appear larger, in which we can all attest to, that the sun is actually a lot smaller than a lot of people think. So it's like the spreading of light against the black of space distends the sun's apparent diameter while diminishing the size of a dark object in front of the sun, such as a transiting planet or light source. So the apparent circumference of the sun appears larger than the true circumference. Again, this is known as black drops and parallax. So this is a photo from NASA called Transits of Mercury Across the Sun. And the time span all the way from BCE as well as CE. So as you can see, starting from the bottom going up, that it is an ascending node, and meaning that Mercury has been tracked across different portions of the sun over the centuries. And so that would allude to, of course, that Venus is not always at the same height in the sky. And that also applies to Mercury and its transits, as well as has been documented, and that will also apply to all other stars. Now, this is the kicker. Now, where they came from again with the distances of stuff, I told you how they persuaded that they came up with that or alluded to, but the fact of a transit is a key factor because it lets you know that the stars are not always at the same height, although the sun may be. And so that would mean that the other stars, in which they call planets or whatever you want to call it, are not always at the same elevation level either. So that may mean not that they are farther away, but that they are higher in elevation, meaning above the ecliptic of the sun, meaning you will never see a transit of these other bodies. But that does not mean that they are not over the same plane, which is why stars were used for sailing. Because the further you travel in the oceans, as I stated before, which is why they went to New Zealand, you're able to see more of the stars from a distance. Now, going back to the fact that they said that they had people spread all over the world, and of course, they used triangulation to gauge the distance from Venus to the Earth. For triangulation purposes, all spots of that triangle should be, of course, on opposite sides. Not only does it require them to be on different sides, but there should be a central point. But when doing triangulation of a star and you have people at all three corners and they're both looking inwards, that would allude to the star being within the triangle or above the plane, which is required to gauge area. If all people a part of that triangulation were looking towards the same direction, that's not really triangulation. So after Cook observed the transit of Venus allegedly, he did receive secret orders from the Admiralty to sail to 40 degrees south in search of the supposed Great Southern Continent. If not encountered, he was then to head due west to find the east coast of New Zealand. They never mentioned Antarctica as being a continent or anything, when the whole purpose of their journey was to find that other balancing continent. They never even went there. They only went down to 71 degrees south and ruled out the existence of a great southern continent. Now, the funny thing is that Captain Cook has been coined for having been one of the sailors that have circumnavigated the world. And based on everything that I went over in this video in research, as far as Tahiti, New Zealand, and Australia go, none of them are past the 60-degree latitude line. 60 degrees south latitude line. So if they are including Antarctica as a continent, as they say. So I think it is time out for the circumnavigation theory and stuff like that, because I feel like it has been played out. It is no different from the rotational theory or the spherical theory. It's just keeping people going in a circle. So what needs to be addressed and focused on more so south, where you should, if based on the globe earth model, which we know is incorrect, you should end up in the southern portion of one of the continents. So eventually, of course, your southern is still going to be southern. It's going to be the southern portion of a continent, although you are allegedly supposed to continue or begin to travel north. So my question is, why the turnaround?